guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna talk to you guys about all of the books I have read so far this year, what I rated them, and kind of go through them and show you. I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Okay, the first book that I read this year, I was already halfway through the book and I finished it in January, but that was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I have slowly been making my way through these books. I think I've read the other three last year. So I actually read the first like three books last year, and so started this one end of the year, finished it early this year. I'm hoping to get through all of the books maybe by the end of this year, but it's just not high on my radar. I love, you know, the Harry Potter world. This is the first time I'm actually reading them, so, you know, I've watched the movies. I kind of know what happens. These are just kind of comfort reads, but this was the first book that I read this year. The next book that I read this year was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This was the first Coho book I had ever read, and it was okay. It was definitely spicy, and I had never like really read anything like that, like true romance before, but I gave it 4 stars. It was good. It was very different from what I was used to. It was a good book. A lot of my friends have read this book and they really enjoyed it, so this is the second book. The third book I read this year was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I actually just put this book in my last video of like what to read during the summer. I loved this book. It was so good. It just like took me back to high school with like how, you know, they were acting and what they did, but I definitely love this book. I'm so glad I read it, and I want to read it more by Lynn Painter. And so this was definitely a good read this year. So the next few books I read, I was on a thriller kick. I needed to. Haley Pham talks so much about Riley Sager and, you know, her thrillers, so I figured I would read, you know, some thrillers and see what they were about. I had never read thrillers before. The first one I read was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. My mind was blown. I think because I'm not used to reading thrillers, I can't really guess what's gonna happen at the end, but this was a good book, and it definitely made me want to read more thrillers, because the next book I read was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This one I gave a 4 stars. This one was really good. It was just missing something, and I felt like I was very shocked, but it wasn't like anything that like blew my mind, if that makes sense. So it was definitely really good, and I would recommend this. This book, it was like my second thriller, you know, so I'm still kind of getting used to like the whole atmosphere and everything, but I'm definitely going to be reading more thrillers, you know, later on in the year, once Halloween comes, everything like that. The book after that was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. 5 out of 5 stars. This like was the book that sold me for like when Haley was talking about them. This was crazy. I was sitting there, I couldn't put it down. I just needed to know what was happening. It was just so good, and it made me want to buy all of his books and read them all. I don't have enough words to explain how I feel about this book. It was so good, and it's a thriller, you know, so it's mystery. You don't know what's happening, and I liked that because it took like a break from like the romancy kind of books that I was reading. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for this one. The book after that I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This just wasn't for me, honestly. Talking about it right now, I don't really remember it. I gave it a 4 stars on Goodreads. It was okay. I think at the time, like, it was good. Like, that's why I have to give myself a break after I read a book, because if I rate it right away, it's usually not like my true rating, whereas like if I wait a day or so, I'm like, okay, it actually wasn't like, you know, the best book I'd ever read. This was, I would still stick with it as a 4 star because it was good. It just wasn't as good as the other thrillers I've read. I would put this one below The Paris Apartment. If I had to recommend a book, it would be The Paris Apartment over this one. This was like her newer release, and it was cool. It was similar like style. Like I love the way she does her summary of the book, but this was a 4 stars. It was still good. I'm glad I read it. Then we went back into some more popular books. Twisted Love. This one was okay. This one was actually a 3.75 stars for me. The reason I didn't give it a 4 is because the previous books I rated a 4 just had something a little bit more, but I felt like I couldn't give this a 3. So I had to give it somewhere in between. I know that's annoying, but Twisted Love, this one I enjoyed. It was really cool. I think I flew through it. It really is not that big of a book, but a part of me was just like, what? Like, what is even happening in this book? But people say that the other books are better, so I'm thinking about reading the second book. I just don't know when. I'm glad I read it. Would I read it again? No. After that, I went into some more like mystery romance, and that was the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. So I gave the first and the second book a 5 stars. I really enjoyed them. This book was just lacking at the end, As Good as Dead. I felt like the other two just like reeled me in. I couldn't put it down, whereas the last book just kind of fell flat at the end for me. I still really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. It just wasn't a 5 out of 5 for me. The next book I also talked about in my last video. I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. I loved this book. This was my first Emily Henry book, and I loved it. As I said in my last video, it holds a special place in my heart. There is so many good like things to learn from this book. You have the like romance, and you have like the friend relationship, which is really nice because I feel like I haven't read a lot of stories that have so many different friends and it shows their relationships with each other. And this book just, it was beautiful. I loved it. 10 out of 10. This was a 5-star rating for me. After Happy Place, I had to go into Beach Read by Emily Henry. Another 5 out of 5. When I was rating all of my books, looking back, I feel like I'm rating too many 5 out of 5s, but honestly, they are some of the best books I've read, and I've read a lot of books in my life. This was a 5 out of 5. I feel if it gives me that feeling, I can't just like, you know, rate it lower because I feel like I'm giving too many 5 out of 5s. The books I'm choosing, I have a feeling I'm gonna like, which is why I like a lot of them. But Beach Read, definitely cute. It gave me that romance, like heart feelings, so I enjoyed this book a lot. Okay, the next books I went into were the Fine Print, so Dreamland Billionaire series basically. The Fine Print I gave a 4.75. I really enjoyed it, but after reading the other ones, I just knew it wasn't a 5 for me. Terms and Conditions I gave a 4.5. So I liked it a little bit less than the Fine Print, but the Final Offer I gave a 5 stars. When I go back and think about these, I loved this one for the Disneyland-esque, Disney World-esque environment. And it was really cute. It just felt rushed in a way, and so I just knew I couldn't give it a full 5 stars, but it's like one of my favorite series I've read. So for Terms and Conditions, it didn't feel as rushed. It's a fake dating kind of trope. It didn't feel as rushed, but I liked the fine print a little bit more with like the characters. And then Final Offer, I had to give a 5 out of 5 because I just felt like the topics that Lauren Asher talked about, it was just so beautifully written, and I flew through the book. I went so fast, and this was a chunky book. This is bigger than I think the other two, but 5 out of 5 for this last book. The next books I went into, I have read for a while. I know reading has become popular because of like book talk and everything like that, but I was reading far before that, and I read a lot of the series that people are reading now. One of them being the ACOTAR series. This I remember when these were big way back when, really long ago. Hardcover, like their original covers. I wanted to read them so badly. I just hadn't gotten the chance to read them. When they came out with these new covers, I had to buy them. Like, no words. This series, like when I said Happy Place holds a place in my heart, this is like a whole different level, whole different atmosphere, whole different world. This is probably one of my favorite series ever, like top 2. And I read them really fast, like in a week. So first we have ACOTAR. I gave this one a 4.5. It was good. I feel like towards the end of it, I was like, well, when I was happy in the beginning of the book, now I like hate this person. So I gave it a 4.5. It was still good. I give this whole series like infinity out of 5. Like, I'm just saying. 4.5. Then we have Akamov. I give this a infinity. I loved it. 10 out of 5 stars. It was amazing. I don't know. I have not felt the feelings I felt with this book in any other book I've ever read my whole life. That's it. I already wanted to reread these. I was in this book and I was like, I need to reread the whole series. This is only 2nd book and I was already saying I needed to reread it. Then we have ACOWAR. This one I gave a like 100 stars too. It's not as good as Akamov, but I love it. Still like infinity for me. Then this one is a little bit more, what is the word? Contradictory, that word, I'm blanking. A lot of people didn't like this book. Now, when I went into it, I was very much aware it's a novella. It's not anything that's supposed to blow your mind, you know? I still gave it 4.5. I liked it because I was crying that these books were about to end. And so this kind of like gave me a little bit more, that it kind of like helped me transition to, okay, Feyre and, you know, her world is coming to a close. And so it kind of helped me prepare myself for the series being over. I still enjoyed it. I know it wasn't needed. I know there's some things in here that people just didn't like. To each their own, you know? Then the last book, A Court of Silver Flames. This one was really good. I feel like it wasn't my favorite. I gave it a 4.75. It was a bit slower going into it just because, one, it's a massive book, but it just wasn't the same point of views as I was used to, and I was still getting used to the characters here. I wanted to say with this whole series, the whole ACOTAR series, it is very rare that I read a like fantasy book where I'm invested in every single character. This series, I loved everyone. I don't want to like spoil, like I don't want to give names because I don't want to spoil it, but if you're worried about spoiling, just skip to the number I put here. I loved Cassian and Azriel, like just their commentary. I laughed out loud so many times. Reasoned and Feyre, their relationship is like goals for me. Just the way he always gave her a choice, or everyone he knew in his life a choice. It was never, you're gonna do this or this is what's gonna happen. It was always a choice. And it's very rare that I love everyone's point of view. But I did. I was interrupted. I don't know where I was talking about, but I love this series. That's all I have to say. The last few books that I read were within the last week. Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight. I read it in this order of like Throne of Glass, then Crown of Midnight, then Assassin's Blade. This is another series that I've actually owned since they came out, and I have already read all of these books, and I'm in the middle of Air and Fire. I read it in a different order than I did the first time. I was looking at a few TikToks of like what people recommended because I couldn't really remember too much of the series, which I kind of liked that I didn't remember much. But I'm glad that I read it in the order I did. Throne of Glass starts off, reeled me in. I loved it. I think I gave it a, I don't remember. I'm gonna put it on the screen because I don't want to get my ratings wrong. I feel like I could rate all of these a 5 out of 5, but I know I didn't. So I read Throne of Glass, which was really good, and it was a really nice ending point to go right into Crown of Midnight because it kind of leaves off, not on a cliffhanger, but on a really good note to just be able to really continue the next book. And then this book ended off at a really good point to take a break and go into Assassin's Blade. This had a lot of background on her, and I will say, if you read it in the order I did, you're spoiled for a few things. I already knew about them because I've read the books, but you did get spoiled for this book if you read these two first. It just talks about a few things that when you go into this, it's like, okay, yeah, like I kind of already know that this person, what's gonna happen, and I kind of know this situation that she's talked about before. So these are the last 3 books I have read so far this year. Okay, I actually had to come in here because that is not all the books I've read. I have actually read Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. I just forgot to add it into this video. I read Cassandra Clare's book before I went into the Throne of Glass series, and honestly, the book fell flat, very flat, just didn't do it for me. It was actually kind of disappointing, unfortunately. The other 2 books I gave in that trilogy was like a 6 out of 5. Like, I loved them. That was actually one of my favorite series of all time. But like I said, unfortunately, that last book just did not do it for me. I ended up rating it a 3 out of 5 stars. I know it's already beginning August, so I'm a little bit late, but I'm really proud of myself for getting in all of these books. I think I'm on my 26th one. Hold on. I'm on my 25th book, and that is Heir of Fire. I think I'm gonna finish the rest of the series before I go on to anything else, but I will do a part 2 for the last half of the year and what I read. I am also thinking about doing like a picking TBR. I know it's kind of end of July, so I need to do it fast if I want to, but I'm getting in a lot of books, so I kind of want to wait till I get all the books I'm wanting and then pick my TBR for August, but we will see. I hope you guys enjoyed this video going through all of the books that I've read so far this year. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought about them. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you want to see more book related videos. I also just made a book Instagram, so I will put that here, and then I will also put it in the comments below along with like my Goodreads. I hope you guys like this video, and I will see you in the next one.